Thursday, the 18th of March, and welcome to the Breakfast Show. I'm your host, Mark Anthony, and yes, we do have a new theme tune. I hope you like it. We're still playing around with the format of this show, but new theme tune, so get used to that one. We will get to the news headlines in just a second, but first let's take a look, as we always do, with a look at who's celebrating a birthday today. So, many happy returns to rapper, actress and TV presenter Queen Latifah, and also to Dragon's Den star and professional wealthy bloke Peter Jones. Peter, if you're watching, and I'm sure you are, and you'd like to invest in the world's smallest and most vertical daily news broadcaster, you know where to find me. Okay, on with the show, and we'll be right back after this.
If you enjoyed this show, please consider supporting us. Go to buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
And we start with the news that at long last there's some progress in the prosecution surrounding the death of 5 recycling plant workers in Birmingham back in July 2016. 2 directors of a recycling plant where 5 men lost their lives crushed under a collapsed wall have appeared in court for the first time to face charges connected to the tragedy. The 2 men each also face 4 charges, 2 alleging they failed to discharge their health and safety duties to employees and to others not employed to ensure that they were not exposed to risks, and 2 charges that further claim this failure was a result of their consent or connivance or was attributable to neglect. The fatal accident actually occurred on the 7th of July 2016, approximately 5 months after the collapse of the boiler house at the Didcot A power station that claimed the lives of 4 demolition workers. And I'm not the first, and I probably won't be the last to draw parallels between the 2 incidents. What I find astonishing is the fact that it's taken almost 5 years for this scrapyard one to come to court. I don't condone the time that it's taken to reach a similar conclusion over the Didcot disaster. I can see why that would be more complex because of the sheer scale of the number of interviewees, or witnesses that need to be interviewed, the number of stakeholders that need to be taken into consideration, the amount of evidence they need to trawl through. But in the accident in Birmingham, a wall collapsed and crushed 5 men. I can't for the life of me see quite why that's taken so long to figure that out. All that being said, as I was coming on air today, I read a news story over on the Construction Index about a fatal piling rig accident that's taken a full 7 years to reach a conclusion. Something needs to be done about that. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but I think the HSE does need to respond more quickly to these things. Now, construction of roads, bridges, cycle lanes, water, gas and communications to service the 10,000 homes set to be built at Meridian Water in Edmonton will start later this month. Enfield Council has entered a framework agreement with Vinci Taylor Woodrow, Bam Nuttall and Volker Fitzpatrick to deliver the £90 million works as part of a wider £6 billion North London regeneration scheme. The first tranche of work is expected to generate 150 jobs, supporting 10 skilled apprenticeships with at least £4 million of contracts going to local construction companies, which is great to hear. So far, the council has won £170 million in infrastructure funding from the government. Vistry Partnerships is overseeing phase 1 of the project that includes 950 new homes, of which half will be affordable. Work on the first 300 homes will start later this year, with the first completions due in 2022. Now, maybe it's because it's reported in The Guardian, a newspaper that's as easy to despise as the Daily Mail, although for slightly less obvious reasons. Maybe it's because it's a story about a pair of French people and Brexit has just rubbed off on me, even though I voted to remain. Or maybe it's because it just shows a complete lack of understanding and self-awareness, but more of that shortly, about an industry that I love. Whatever the case, the news that French architects Lacaton and Vassal have won the Pritzker Prize has simultaneously rattled my cage, ruffled my feathers and generally got my goat. But that's not entirely true, actually. It's the reporting of the prize, and in particular a specific quote that has caused me to come over all angry of Wimbledon. According to Lacaton and Vassal, I'm sure that's not how it's pronounced, but I'm enjoying it. Demolition is a waste of energy, a waste of material and a waste of history. For us, it is an act of violence. Well, sacre bleu and mon Dieu, what a load of nonsense. This is an article that appeared in The Guardian, and what it's failed to identify is the fact that demolition is, in fact, one of the key sources of materials for the construction industry. And what makes this so ridiculous, or even more ridiculous than my pronunciation of the two people's names, is the fact that the article goes on to state that the two architects in question are somewhat minimalist in their approach. They were commissioned to regenerate a public square in Bordeaux in France. And their solution, they looked at it, probably charged a fortune, and their solution was to replace the gravel. Now, presumably, they charged an absolute fortune for that consultancy, and they then used virgin gravel that had been ripped from the very bosom of Mother Earth, which, surely that is an act of violence, way more than a demolition process actually putting materials back into circulation. So yeah, you can find out more about that over at Demolition News if you're that way inclined. Let's move on with the next news item, which is following this. Now, as I sit here, I'm roughly 27 miles from the town of Horsham, which means it will be nice and easy for me to go and visit the site once work gets underway on an industrial unit owned and operated by a company called Forza Doors. I'm saying Forza, it could be Forza, but first the contract for that demolition needs to be let. According to the Builders Conference, who know about these things, the existing industrial unit is to be demolished and replaced as part of a £1 million upgrade. As I say, the client is Forza Doors, aided by Folks Architects. Although it isn't yet confirmed, Sunny Hill Construction is thought to be in contention for the main build. You can find out more about this contract lead and more besides by visiting buildersconference.co.uk. Or you can ask the man who knows about these things. We don't normally have a guest on these shows, but good morning, Neil. Good to see you. Neil is CEO of the Builders Conference. He is the man with his finger on the very pulse of the industry, and it was him that told me about this particular contract. Before we get on to this one in particular, Neil, does this constitute a boom? I've looked at the BC Live League this morning, and we're at £5 billion a couple of weeks into the month. It looks like we're heading for another bumper month. What the hell is going on?
I wish I knew, actually, Mark. It's quite remarkable, really, isn't it? We're just over halfway through March, and we're already at sort of like, what is it, something like £5.2 billion worth of contract awards. So yeah, I can only say that the construction industry is definitely powering the UK economy at the present moment in time.
Yeah, what I find really surprising is you've started very kindly to send me through details of sort of demolition projects that are out there. Not only are you sending them with a great degree of regularity, but the response that I've had from some of the industry is it's almost a case of, well, thanks for sharing that. That's fantastic, but I'm absolutely chock-a-block with work already. The thing that surprises me most about it this time around is, when we've had sort of good periods in the past, it's tended to be sporadic. And I know you and I touch on the fact that a lot of demand is London-centric, but this upswing in construction and in demolition does seem to be pretty much national.
It is, yeah. It's definitely it seems to have gone throughout the country. This boom. It is more concentrated around London, Manchester, Birmingham, but you'd expect that. But generally across the whole of the UK, we are seeing an upsurge in projects that are going forward. That obviously brings into consideration, are we going to have a skill shortage in the future? Because all these projects need people to do them. And if we've been kind of dormant over the last, a year, not quite dormant, but, a little bit quiet, to re-energise an industry and also get production line. And I know you spoke about yesterday, JCB, going to hire some more people. I think that's going to be carried on through a number of actual manufacturers across the UK, and hopefully people will see us as an industry to join very, very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, the JCB news obviously was good news and positive news. Following the fact that they had to lay off some people at the beginning of the COVID crisis. But I think what is more telling is we reported previously about the fact that in order to reach net zero targets that the government set, we're going to need something like 320,000 new workers in the construction industry by, I think they said it was 2029, in order to reach the targets for 2050. We've had a skill shortage in the industry for as long as I can remember, and yet we've suddenly got to come up with more than 250,000 new people in the next 8 years or so to drive that net zero demand. I'm not entirely sure how we're going to do it, particularly when we've got projects like HS2 going on. They're going to be such a huge draw on our workforce anyway.
Yeah, I think there's got to be a different mindset, really, that when we look at our education process, we kind of now say to people, yeah, there are many different areas that you can go into, but don't forget construction, because it's going to play a significant part going forward from now. You just talked about the green side. When you're recladding or I know from, I think is it 2025, something like boilers, isn't it? There is going to be no gas boilers installed. So we really have to start to invest today, which is 2021, and start training these people so they are ready and on the market for us to actually use once all these projects start coming through the pipeline.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that stood out for me from that CITB report that I'm drawing upon for the 320,000 new workers, they reckon that about 85% of the buildings that will be in existence in 2050 have already been built. And that kind of brought to mind the fact that a lot of the people that are going to be driving that forward, and even sooner, HS2, HS2 is going to take a decade or thereabouts to complete. So a good number of the people that are likely to be required to deliver that are currently quite possibly at primary school, quite possibly haven't even been born yet. That's where we need to start. It's all very well grabbing school leavers and that kind of thing, but the demand that we're going to have is, as I say, it's a decade away. We need to be trying to convince people that construction is a good place to be, when they're 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, don't we?
Absolutely. And hopefully there are bodies out there that are listening to this interview between the two of us, because it's not just a case of talking the talk. We have to walk the walk, because we've been here so many times through our careers, both you and I, that and you would report on it. And when I was working for in the construction industry itself for a contractor, we would continuously be searching for good people. And it's not a case of, it's once in a lifetime. It is on a regular basis. So I hope people are listening to this and starting to take advice or look at our sort of figures, the real-time information. It's no good getting the information. I think the ONS came out with some figures the other day from December. Well, that's no good to anybody. You need them now. You need to be agile. You need to be getting forward and starting to prepare, because it won't be long before the new school term is actually being planned for, because we're now in March, April, not soon to be in April. And the new school term will be September. So colleges, universities and all that have to start to wise up to this effect that we need more construction workers.
Yeah, that's one of the key frustrations that I find. I mean, watching my friend and occasional co-host Peter Haddock has been doing a lot of work with the likes of Flannery and Lynch and people like that. They've set up shop in and around the HS2 route, and they've put in place training schools and that kind of thing. So the industry itself is doing what needs to be done, but you can only train people in construction once they're out of school. And what the construction industry has been very, very good at, and particularly the plant industry, I'd have to say, is the fact that they've identified a need, they've identified where that need is going to be, and they've done something about it. Are the schools around Birmingham, are the colleges, the universities around Birmingham or on the HS2 route doing the same? And unless I'm missing something, I don't believe they are. And I know we have, I think it's an annual event, in normal circumstances, there's an annual skills event at the NEC. But from memory, I mean, certainly the construction industry and the demolition industry have very, very little presence, if any at all, there. And yet, you know, with HS2, with Commonwealth Games and various other bits and pieces, you know, you would have thought that would have been a real hub and a real place to drive some change.
Yeah, and it's also looking like the UK itself is going to also try and get the Football World Cup as well. So when you put in all these together, all these you know, marquee projects, as well as just generally the retrofit of many buildings, we could be in a skill shortage in the not too distant future. Yes, probably we've got to look at how we manufacture stuff. And I know you've had on your programs previously that there are certain industries now that are taking a lot of their ideas and things from the Formula One, which would interest, and that's what we've got to get over to young people, is the fact that it isn't just dirty, horrible, cold, wet on site. There are many different facets to our industry. Yes, we have got that part where we've got to go out on site and build the things, but we could also look at modular prefabrication inside as well. So we really have to take off our shackles, and not just because we've done it like this for so long. We've got to be totally open-minded. Open market.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, Neil, I know you've hopped on at a moment's notice, and I do appreciate it. I'm going to let you get back to the day job in a second. Just one final point. I want to end on a more positive note. Obviously, you know, skill shortage is very much a real threat. But you have to say, construction is going great guns at the moment, isn't it?
Oh, it's tremendous. It really is. You know, as I sit here now, I've got the live dashboard up in front of me. We've put on, just in the month of March, 602 new construction projects we've entered onto the system. So they're new and we've not seen them before. And that's with a value of something like £8.1 billion. That's projects. But if you just look at contract awards, we're up to, what is it now? I think it's over 200, something like that, even more than that. So we're over £5 billion worth of work there, you know. So it's powering forward. And once the full lockdown is starting to ease, I can only see it getting busier, to be honest with you.
From your lips to God's ears, as they say. Neil, I'm going to let you get back to the day job. I'm going to wrap this show up in a second because you've arrived. We're already running about 10 minutes later than we normally do. So,
okay,
which is a great thing. Thanks ever so much for your
good
input.
To speak to you.
Thanks for hopping on at a moment's notice.
Good to speak to you, Mark.
Right, just one more thing before I get back to my day job, whatever the hell that is these days. I watched a TV documentary last night called Our Silent Emergency. I don't know if everybody else has actually seen this. The show itself was funded by Comic Relief and it was hosted by Roman Kemp, and it's about the rise of male suicide. Obviously, this is something we've covered on Demolition News for a number of years now. Suicide is prevalent among young men. It's even more prevalent right here in the construction industry. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't have particularly high hopes for the documentary. A show about male suicide fronted by the privileged offspring of two 80s pop stars didn't sound like a particularly good mix, but I can highly recommend it. And I will gladly admit that my preconceptions about Roman Kemp were proved entirely wrong. He came across exceptionally well. He covered the subject very, very well. If you're here in the UK, you can still catch that show on BBC iPlayer. If you know someone, or if you are someone with mental health issues, or you're struggling at any point, this show will, honestly, it will be of genuine value. I would highly recommend it. I think that will just about do us for today. I'll be back here tomorrow, same time, same place, for our 20th consecutive Breakfast show. But until then, stay safe, have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks for watching.